Hello, this is Mark Sabatella from Outside Shore Music. I had a recent experience, actually two of them in the last week, where I was asked to take an original arrangement I had created for a certain number of instruments and add one more instrument to it. Two situations came up in the last week, and it was a fun little project, and I just want to talk briefly about it. So one of the things I had was a recorder duet on the really simple song that is used in the United States as to teach recorder, hot cross buns. And I had written this really nice little accompaniment that starts off simple, right? Just really simple. And it gradually gets more and more complex until by the end we're actually looking at so, lots going on in this arrangement, and I was a little scared about how am I going to add another part to that and have it still work. Well, the reality is chords have 3 notes in them, at least, right? That's a triad. Seventh chords have 4 notes in them. So there's always a note that's not necessarily being covered when you've got only 2 parts there. So it's theoretically possible to slot in another part and get a third part or even a fourth part in there. So I'm going to show you what I ended up with. Let's go back up to the top here. And at the top here, when my original added part here was real simple, my third part is also real simple. And it's basically just filling out the triad, or because this happens to be for cello, it's the lowest note of the voice, I am leaning harder on the root. Where possible, I'm putting the root in there. Even if that means perhaps doubling a root sometimes, like I do right there. The root's doubled, and that's fine. When I get to the end with all that fancy counterpoint going on, then it really is more a question of slotting in the extra note, the note of the triad that wasn't accounted for, looking at the intervals between the notes and making this work. But if you've chosen your first 2 parts, arrange those well, there will be room for a third part if you're even moderately lucky. So here's what it ends up sounding like with that third part. Now that I hear it this way, I don't even want to hear it without that cello part anymore. I really like it with the cello part. So that was one example. The other example of this was actually like a kind of a pop song that I had been asked to produce a horn arrangement for with trumpet, alto sax, and trombone, and it sounded like this. So this is a much kind of jazzier sound. All the chords are 7th chords. Many of them have like ninths and things in them. And so when it came time to add another part here, the part that I was asked to add was a tenor saxophone. And so I went ahead and did that. And now we can see it with the tenor sax part right here, this line. And basically, again, it was looking for the missing note. My original voicing here was a 5th, a 3rd, and a 9th, and it was just missing the 7th of the chord. So that's the note I added, right? 4 notes on those 7th chords, so it was almost always a note to be added. If the missing note was a root, then I got to decide, well, do I really want to use a root or do I want to make it be a 9th? Because that's kind of a jazz thing. But in any case, it was always possible to add in that 4th voice, and it sounds very natural. Here, it's I like it both ways. I like it as a 3-horn version. I like it as a 4-horn version. And this was just an interesting little exercise I went through that was just curious that it came up twice in the same weekend. I worked on both of these arrangements, and if you ever find a use for that, just think about that. Be inspired that you can find room. Just find the missing note in the chord, plug it in, and try to tie it all together and have it make sense. And if you get lucky, you get something that you will actually like at least as much as what you started with.